Thank you. So just to put a bow on this issue, the temporary use permit number 78 has been denied. Any further action on this site is now up to the applicant and our bylaw team. Moving on to 7.2.1. Thank you. This is a request for decision regarding asset disposal policy number 41-2024. We can stop back in Suzanne. Great. Oh, there she is. Excellent. Good morning, Director LaFrance. We're on 7.2.1. And this is a recommendation from the Policy and Development Committee. I will turn it over to you for a high-level overview of this item.
Yeah, so this, I wasn't really prepared for this, to be honest, but this policy was a requirement and a request from the board, I believe in 2018, but it fell off the fuel basically, but it's now been reignited this year. We worked on a policy by following a couple other regional district policies for asset disposals. And so we brought it to the policy committee. There was a couple suggested changes that we will work on and bring to the board for approval.
Great. And just for clarity, for the sake of the public, the fuel is the follow-up and action list. And this is something that we work from. This is our work plan as a board and staff to ensure that motions and actions requested by the board continue in the process, but are prioritized based on the strategic priorities of the organization. And so for the sake of this, we are asking for the board to approve that these definitions of donations and addition of asset transfer considerations be kept on the work plan for staff to be brought forward to a future meeting for a decision. So would someone like to make that motion?
So moved.
Moved by Director Birch-Jones, seconded by Director Mack. Any questions or comments from anyone on this item? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. And then a recommendation from the Pemberton Valley Utilities and Services Committee. And this is 7.3.1. And I imagine we have this is a flow through from Stevens. We move them all together. Okay, so the recommendation is before us. Would someone like to make a motion? Moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director Birch-Jones. Any comments?
Can we move all the dots
I think
in
we
one
can do them
go?
all together, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
That's what we're moving.
Yeah.
All right. I will call the question. All in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion carries. And 7.3.2 is also from PVIS. This is a PDIP initiative funding for Pemberton Farmers Market Association funding renewal request for 1 year. Someone like to make that? Moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director Herford. Comments? All in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we are now at 8.1. Yeah. Hi. This is a request for decision for the electoral area A OCP bylaw. Third reading and adoption, and I'll turn the floor to you.
So thank you, Chair Ford. I'll matter with the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District. I do have a brief staff presentation, but in the interest of time, there's only been quite minor amendments made since second reading, so I'll leave it up to the board's discretion whether you'd like to see a presentation or not.
Go ahead.
I attended the public hearing. I think you guys have done an amazing job with this OCP, and I see that the comments are incorporated. I'm pretty comfortable moving this, but really it's over to Director Demare.
Director Demare, do you have preference here?
I think I'd like to see the presentation.
Okay,
Please.
great. Thank you.
It's a beautiful picture of cabbage.
Thank you. As mentioned, this is for consideration of third reading and adoption today. You can go to the next slide. You've seen this graphic before. This has been about a 3-year project at this point in time. We're now in phase 5, which started in June. Since the October board meeting, we had a public hearing on November 21st. And now we're ready for consideration of third reading and adoption. You can go to the next, skip 2 slides ahead. Okay, so at the public hearing, we had 18 members of the public in attendance. We had 13 written submissions that were received, and we had 2 members of the public that spoke to the bylaw at the meeting. The vast majority of the public input that we received was concerning 2 draft objectives that were in the Parks, Trails, and Recreation section. And those were objectives that recommended reduction of habitat fragmentation that could potentially occur from off-trail recreation and trails development, and an objective for a no net gain, no net loss approach to trails management. And I think the members of the public really felt that those 2 could potentially be addressed through the future trails management plan process in the region as opposed to in the OCP. So they just want to have further community input into those before they land there. Next slide, please. So the additional concerns that were raised, these were all raised by just 1 submission each. So there was a lack of support for inclusion of language to support First Nations involvement in trails planning, development, and management without additional opportunities for community input. There was a comment around the need to address resource extraction and future impacts to the community of Braylorn, and a comment around the need to provide positive recommendations for small water systems where they must be utilized. Next slide, please. Next slide. So all of the public comments that were received were addressed in the amendments process. As I said, we've made some minor amendments since it was last before the board for second reading. And those amendments are the result of, as I just said, the public hearing submissions, also board input that was received at the October board meeting, and some staff recommendations that I did speak to briefly at the last meeting around affordable housing. So this will just be a high-level overview. Again, everything is highlighted in your document in the agenda package, should you wish to look at that. And that's on, I should have said page 311 of your package. Next slide. So we've gone through and updated all of the image captions and credits throughout the report. We've added some new historic agriculture images that were provided by the Braylorn Museum through Director Demare. I went back in and added, we had a student mural that was produced by the Goldbridge Community School in June of 2022 that wasn't in the report, but I think we felt was a really important component of the community engagement work that was done early on. And then we changed the image for the wildfire protection development permit area to one from the 2023 wildfire. And I just want to quickly note that on page 124 of the report, the image for the farmland protection DPA showing Seton Lake is going to be swapped out at the time of consolidation for one that Director Demare has provided, showing hay production. So section 2.2 under community context, we did go through and amend the language around small water systems in order to reflect that positive and best practices approach where they do need to be utilized. Next slide. Section 5, housing. So this I did speak to at the previous board meeting as well as the public hearing. We updated the introductory text to include affordable housing information. And we added 4 new policies around affordable housing provision to create consistency across the regional district, while of course making them reflective of the specific context of Area A. Next slide. So section 7, parks, trails, and outdoor recreation. This saw the most substantial amendments. We amended objective 7.2.1 to include a reference to sensitive subalpine and alpine habitats, and that is reflected in the policies that follow the objectives. Objective 7.2.2, we amended to include language around maintaining and legitimizing existing trails. So that would be under the Forest Range and Practices Act. And next slide, please. Objective 7.2.3 was amended to focus on local residents and consider the needs of First Nations whose territory parks and trails rest on. So it was just amended to create more flexibility as the community moves forward with trails planning and development. We removed the 2 objectives that the community opposed at the public hearing. And then we Also amended 7.3.7 to consider collaboration with all First Nations when developing a trails master plan in the future. Next slide. The other change, which we did also speak to at the public hearing, is that we added a new map to show the lands in Area A that the Farmland Protection Development Permit area applies to. So that's a 300-meter buffer zone around the agricultural land reserve lands. Next slide, next slide. So that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. Okay, so you had a question, Director Pettengill, go ahead.
Yeah, and I read the feedback and it made sense to me, the comments about questioning whether trails development would always cause fragmentation or might actually help remove some in some cases. And I sort of get the resistance to tying the idea of fragmentation specifically to trails, but I am a bit concerned about pulling the idea about thinking about fragmentation in general, and it was mentioned in the report. So I'm wondering why we haven't, or is there something stopping us from putting back in a sort of higher level concept of development should avoid fragmentation of critical habitat areas as a general principle?
Yeah, so thank you through the chair. We didn't keep the fragmentation language, but that is why you see that amendment to the objective where it mentions the sensitive alpine and subalpine habitats, because staff felt it was really important to keep that in there because those are the areas that have the potential to be most impacted by development and recreational development, especially if it's off trail. I think some of those issues and concerns will also be addressed through the planned Trails Master Plan process in the future in Area A.
So given some of the discussion, are we just sort of avoiding a discussion, or are we sort of confident that people understand we have this general principle of not wanting to fragment critical areas given?
So thank you through the chair. I do want to draw your attention to, so there's a related, as I said, a related policy, which is the other reason that we felt keeping that language in there was really important. So 7.3.12, which follows the objectives, is discourage outdoor recreation and trail development in environmentally sensitive areas. So there was a bit of a duplication as well in the language before, and we felt that between the objectives and policies that it did still cover off that important goal.
Okay.
Any other questions? I don't see any other questions. Would someone like to move third reading of this? Moved by Director Demerick, seconded by Director Mack. Comments?
Well done.
Director Demerick, do you have comment?
Yes, I do. I want to thank staff that have worked to get the updated Area A OCP to this stage. Can't imagine how much work went into this, and it's really appreciated. One of my goals was community engagement, which definitely was accomplished. And various processes that were implemented were excellent. I also want to thank the Community Advisory Committee members for their input at the start of the process, and all of the community members that were engaged and gave input into the OCP update. Awesome. And I would like to make a motion to approve the SLRD Area A OCP amended.
Okay, the motion's already on the floor, and I will call the question. All in favor? Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. And now we need a motion to adopt the Area A OCP, moved by Director Demerick, second by Director Mack. All in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Fantastic. All right, 8.2, Boulder Creek Operators Resident Zoning Amendment Bylaw 1850-2024. Are you moving it?
Yes.
Moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director Birch Jones. Comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. 8.3, Braylorn Water Rates and Regulations Bylaw. And this is a two-part, so this is to move first, second, and third reading. Questions first, please, Director Stoner.
Thank you through the chair, and this will apply to all of the water rate bylaws with the proposal of a 2% increase It was unclear to me as to whether that was sufficient to help build the reserves for the capital replacements, not seeing the reserve continuity schedules, and understanding where these water systems are in terms of replacement. So I'm just wondering if staff can speak to why the 2% was selected, and try and build some confidence that that is going to be sufficient in terms of reserve building at this time.
Excellent. Director LaFrance, the floor is yours.
Yes, hi, this is Suzanne LaFrance, Director of Finance. Very good question, Director Stoner. The reserves are still in very much, very low quantities. So this really is just the minimum 2% per year for a 5-year period. So 10% overall for these bylaw adjustments. It's just to start the uptick. So we plan on doing this more regularly. We haven't had much capacity to keep up with these water fee rates. So the last water fee rate adjustments, I believe, were in 2016. So we're just starting to keep up, and hopefully this 5-year span will assist that, because we will have some breathing room and then continue with the 5-year span after these bylaw amendments. But yeah, the reserves are still very low, and honestly, for the regional district, there is no way to build reserves high enough for these small water systems.
Yeah, that's fair. Thank you for that. I am just curious, given that there haven't been any increases since 2016, and we know the rate of inflation has been much higher than 2% over that period, if we would consider a higher baseline increase at this time, just to try and play catch up there a little bit.
Yeah, recognizing this is the lowest incremental. There is ability to increase it further, and I'll open that up to the EADs who have already approved these bylaw amendments.
Okay. Is there any desire from the area directors to consider a higher increase to build a more aggressive reserve policy? Were you pointing at?
I would like to see it come back to the next EAD meeting so we can have a thoughtful discussion on this.
Does this need to be approved before the year end? It needs to be approved before the year end, so we can't get it back to EAD, but we can certainly put this on the discussion for next year. And kind of plan to plan. Okay. Go ahead.
Just so I understand though, so it sounds like we're not in a place where we have sort of a fully fledged reserve continuity thing. So we are sort of feeling okay in terms of emergencies and so on, that this is sufficient is essentially what the idea is here.
Director LaFrance, can you speak to that?
Yeah, these water systems generally have very few participants, so they're generally really small water systems. I think the largest ones are Britannia Beach, but even that is, I think, under 200 people. So it's virtually impossible to tax enough to replace the capital assets for these small rural services. So this is just to start the increase in the rates, and it's not really doing much operationally.
Okay. Is everyone clear on what's happening? Okay. Any other questions from anyone else? Okay, so we do have first, second, and third move.
I'll move for second and third.
I think we've already done that. So I will call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. And then I will ask for a motion to adopt the rates for 1881-2024. We're gonna go through this a few times. We're gonna get really good at it. So it's moved by Director Burgess-Jones. It's seconded by Director Herford. This is adoption. All in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion carries. 8.4. We're doing this again. We're on first, second, and third reading for 1884-2024, moved by Director Birch Jones, seconded by Director Mack. Comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. And now adoption of 1884-2024, moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director Birch Jones. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. We're now on divine water rates, first, second, and third. Moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director Rainbow. All in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion carries. And now we're on adoption of 1882, which is the divine water rates, moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director Birch Jones. All in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion carries. We're now on water rates, first, second, and third reading for Britannia Beach, 1479-2016.
I'll move that.
Rainbow, seconded by Director Mack. Are there any opposed? Motion carries. And why are these different?
Adoption.
I am confusing myself. Adoption of 1883-2024. So I got confused by this number here and this number here being different. That's my fault, no one else's. As laid out in the package, adoption moved by Director Rainbow, second by Director Mack. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Everyone clear on where we're at? Do we need the recess? It's 11 o'clock. I think we're good. We're good. We're moving on. We've done 9.1, we've done 9.2. We're at 9.3. And we have Ms. Katerniak here. This is an ALC non-farm use application in Area C.
Yes,
Over to you.
thank you, Chair. So with this item, we're hoping that to get more direction on how to proceed with this ALC non-farm use application. So this application intends to ultimately host various events on agricultural land that doesn't currently hold farm status. Of note is that if the property did have farm status, the proposed events would not fit our definition of gathering for an event, which is a permitted use as of right on properties with farm status. And the reason for that is because the proposed number of attendees would exceed 150. The duration of at least one proposed event would be greater than 24 hours. The location of the event is outside of the farm residential footprint, and the proposed overall footprint of the event is roughly 30,000 square meters, which greatly exceeds the allowed 2,500 square meters. So overall, this proposed use would be not consistent with SLRD policies and plans for agricultural land. And it would also be a very different type of event use from our gathering for an event use that is permitted on properties with farm status. Also of note is that this application was referred to the Ministry of Transportation for comment. And they did state that the site distance for the property driveway is limited and there is no shoulder on the road for viewing traffic. Let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.
Yeah, I know where this piece of property is. I drive by it every day. They've already had events there, like full scale festivals, so a large amount of people. Now, it's in a rather remote section of that highway. There's a couple of neighbors on the other side of the street. And excuse me, actually, there's one neighbor across the street, one neighbor beside. And I think they participate or whatever, so they're not bothering anybody with noise or any of that stuff. The only thing is, like Gates Creek goes right through the property, right? And that's obviously an important fish-bearing stream, creek, whatever you want to say. So I think it's really important that if we were to go ahead and allow this, that they had assurances for us and for Naquatqua that fish-bearing stream would be off limits, protected somehow. They already have their stage structure there from last year. And like I say, they had a lot of people camping there. It was actually, I drove by it a number of times. It was actually pretty well organized. Nobody was out on the road parked. Everybody was parked on the property. So I do think there's, some benefits, obviously. It keeps people contained in an area having their event. It's out of the way. It's not going to impact anybody. Yeah, I think it's definitely a doable situation, just so long as that creek is kind of protected, so we don't have people swimming in the creek and all that kind of stuff, right?
So,
anyways.
just for the sake of questions to staff before a motion gets put on the floor, I have Director Hopful, then Director Pettingill, then Director Rainbow for questions. Go ahead.
Okay, through the chair, so this is agricultural land, and is the proposed events, they're intended to be sited on the same areas where hay is harvested? And so this takes place after all the hay is harvested, so they still maintain their agricultural land status, and then they can have up to 10 events. Is that correct?
Through the chair, I can't speak as to why, but they don't actually have farm status at this moment. They do state in their application that they grow hay and that the event would take place after harvesting, yeah.
I'm just wondering, the staff preferred option is to reject the application, but forward to the ALC and list the reasons why. I'm just wondering why we would do that if we have these other concerns sufficient to reject it, why we wouldn't just reject it and save the ALC some work.
Through the chair, that is a good question. But that is, I believe that's one of the standard decisions that we can make. We can reject it and not forward it to the ALC, or we can reject it and forward it to the ALC. It's just sort of up to the board, something like one of the standard decisions.
Director Nita.
Hi, Chair. I don't have anything more to add, but what Ms. Kotarniak said is correct. The board does not have to forward this to the ALC if they reject it.
And just if we reject it and forward to the ALC and the ALC approved it, they still couldn't move ahead though, right? Or would the ALC? So the ALC couldn't override us.
The ALC can't override our zoning bylaw. So if the ALC were to approve it, this would have to come back to the board for a zoning amendment or a temporary use permit.
Okay, I'll add you to the list. Director Rainbow, then Director Richmond, then Director Birch Jones.
I think I heard Russell say that this property is already hosting events, that they do it. They've been doing it for some time, and they've been doing it without any supervision from anybody, and they've been doing it without disrupting the community. So if we deny this, my guess would be they will continue to do that. Now, Russell also raised Director Mack also raised the question of the stream going through there, and perhaps people swimming in it or doing worse. If we approve this, then surely we can then have some control over, or some influence over how that stream is protected and managed. We can make that a requirement, and something that we could check on. I would prefer to go ahead and legitimize what's already happening there. Thank you.
Director Richmond.
Two-part question, I guess. Is staff's recommendation based on the geotechnical hazard report, or is it more based on like the scale of the request and the agricultural component?
Through the chair, our recommendation is mostly, so it's a combination of factors. The geotechnical concerns are one, but it would also not be consistent with our plans and policies. So our general direction of the OCP and the Pemberton Valley Agricultural Area Plan. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And second part is, if we were to reject this application as is, similar to other discussions, can they come back? Do they have to wait a certain amount of time where they can come back with a scaled down version of the application, or would that have to wait?
Through the chair, I believe a scaled down version would be considered a different application. If it's the same application, they would have to wait 6 months.
Thanks. I'll save my comments.
Thank you. And Director Birchstone's questions?
Thank you. I'm sympathetic to the cash flow situation for many farmers, and I see, hearing Director Mack's description of this being a organized, peaceful, it sounds like an event that's not disruptive, it's not interfering with the agriculture that's going on. Yes, that Gates Creek is pretty important for fish and needs to be protected. Would we send this to the Area C AAC for comments as a matter of routine, or does that have to be requested?
That is one of the options in the report. So that could be our only motion today, would be to refer it to the AAC, and then it would come back to us.
Okay.
The question, Director Mack.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. That's great. But just one thing I want to point out. So this is ALC land jurisdiction, whatever. But as long as I've lived here, that has never been farmed other than for hay production. Both properties, that one and the one to the west of that. There's never been any crops or anything, just hay. So the way they do it, they grow their hay, cut their hay, have their event, and then they actually do a second cut after that. So the hay production carries on, because what they're doing with the hay is, I know they sell some of it, but they're feeding their own horses and such. So anyway.
Do we know? I appreciate the context. This is something that's happening. It's happening in a way that farm use is happening as well. Will the legitimization or potential legitimization of this, do we know that that'll hold that to the limit of what's already been happening? Like I understand, I'm understanding pieces of this, but like with a formal sort of endorsement of those activities, does that change the outcome, do you think, or are there guarantees that we have in there?
Let it allow to get bigger or something?
Yeah. Like to.
They only have so much property, and like the one
more, I'm thinking more frequent or more impact, that's more impactful. That's my question. Or are there tools in this?
They haven't done that previously, so I don't know why they would do it.
Director Needham can probably help us with this.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This application is specific to what they're proposing to do. So they would, if they get an ALC approval, like I said, they would have to come back to us for either a rezoning or a temporary use permit that would align with what has been approved with the ALC. And at that time, we would take it to the Agriculture Advisory Committee in Area C for them to provide some input into those specific applications. So yeah, they wouldn't be able to go beyond whatever the terms of their approval are. But in speaking to keeping people out of the stream, I think that without the stream being kind of barricaded, it would be really hard to keep people from going into the stream.
Chris?
What's the capacity of us or the AAC to sort of understand best farming potential? Because what I'm trying to get is my understanding is a concern that we're generally trying to avoid. And I think it's part of our what we spoke to the ministry about at UBCM is people sort of doing the bare minimum to qualify for farm status. They don't even have that here. Doing events, which is much more lucrative, which pushes up farming values for everyone, makes farming harder for everyone. Whereas if we say no, farming only, it forces them to sort of use best farming, sort of most productive farming thing. And so do we have an understanding of what the best potential is? Can someone tell us, well, no, hay is the only thing you could possibly do here? Or, you know, who do we, or how would we understand that?
Through the chair. Yeah, so there's, I thought that was included in the report, but I don't see it. But there, we do have a data layer showing soil quality. I believe the soil quality is decent. It's a combination of different soils. Does require some improvement for other crops, but it does seem like hay production is sort of the best or the easiest crop to grow at this time, unless they, I guess, improve the soil a little bit.
Director Rainbow, do you have a question?
Yeah, if we deny this request, are we then prepared to move immediately into the kind of action we would have to take to prevent them from having any functions there at all? I don't see this as being something where if we say no, they're going to go, oh my goodness, okay, well, we won't have any more events. They're going to have their events. So if we deny this, we have to be accepting that we're directing staff to go full on with bylaw enforcement, with maybe injunctions, and are we prepared to do that without waiting for complaints?
So let's take that into consideration. That's not what's at issue, I don't think, right now.
I don't know how far we're going to
No, and I don't want to. Yeah, so the options we have in front of us are to forward this application to our Area C, AAC for input and comment, and then it would come back to us. Or we don't forward the application to the Area AAC and we reject the application. Our next option would be to reject the application but forward it to the ALC. As was already described, so let's not go through that again. And we have other options. Would anyone like to put a motion on the floor? Director Natalie.
Well, can we not approve it and move it along to the ALC?
Skipping the AAC?
No, the ALC? I mean,
I'm asking, do you want to skip the AAC?
okay. Oh, yeah, I think it should definitely go to the AAC.
So that's the first option.
Okay, that's the first
Do that.
option. And then if that discussion is fruitful and they say, okay, now we move it with their approval onto the ALC. And then it comes back to us again, and then we will either approve it or.
We'll have more information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's my motion. However you want to do that.
And Director Richmond, did you want to second that? Director Richmond had his hand next.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to second something similar. I'm not sure I want to go that far. I'll just make a quick comment and see if Russell would like to amend his motion. I would like to see it get sent to the AAC. I'd like to see it get to the ALC. I'm not sure how much comment we provide on it. I'm generally supportive of some sort of activity out there like that. I'm a little bit worried about the scale, and I would want to see within the TUP a bunch of controls to address those concerns around the scale and the creek issue. So I'm not personally ready to approve the TUP until I understand what sort of controls we could put on that in that sense. And I would like to hear from the AAC and ALC, but those are my thoughts.
This isn't a PUP. Let's be really, really clear. This is a direction to forward this to the AAC and come back to us with more information.
Okay, but that's not what the motion sounded like. It was to forward it with our approval, with our support of it. I'm saying let's just forward. Is the motion just to forward it, or is it the motion to support it?
To the Area Agricultural Committee.
Yeah. Then I
That's
will
all it is.
stay quiet over here.
No, you're good. You're seconding it. Are there any other new comments? Go ahead.
I will support this. I'm happy to hear from the AAC, but I am sort of inclined right now not to support this in general because one, I am concerned about inflating farm values. And I think this is asking for, they don't have farm status. They're asking for more than what would be allowed if this was operating as a farm under the normal events piece. And I'm also concerned with some of the other discussions today of us setting up the idea that the path is to just ignore our bylaws, then apply for a TUP and assume that we'll say, well, no, but.
So can we?
Okay, so I guess I don't want to encourage the idea of you sort of start doing something and then you ask to legitimize it afterwards and the board feels their hand is forced and they can't. I think there has to be a time when we just say, these are our bylaws and I would like to see some actual compliance with our bylaws beforehand as a sign of, moving forward, we can work well together. And I haven't seen that here, so anyways.
Is everyone comfortable with what the motion on the floor is? Okay. I am gonna call the question. All in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we're on 9.4. Britannia Beach wastewater system bylaw, and we have Director Omar Koskuat. Good morning. Still in the morning. It's still morning.
Omar Black, Director of Environmental Services. I don't know how should I go through the report, or I have a few things to clarify.
Yeah, let's.
This is the last one. Do you want to use the 2.1 pages correspondence about this to discuss?
Yes. We're not there yet.
No, we are. This one is.
Oh, sorry, it is, yes.
Informed.
Thank you. Okay, so for clarity, we have letters that were added to our package later in 13.1. And 13.1? No, 13.1. And those will also be considered in this discussion so that it's not confusing that we're not going back to them later. Over to you. Thank you.
So to clarify I talked about liquid waste coming from the WLNG plant, our project, and to clarify, that is not related to the flotel. There's two locations in the district of Squamish where they have wash cars, which are like washroom trailers. These locations are SMJV Eagle Mountain Warehouse at 39500 Government Road in Squamish. There's 2,500 gallons of septic twice a week from there. And the Palmer-Lillooet wood fiber site, there's 3,000 gallons of septic per week there. I'd also like to know, will we currently have the capacity to accept this waste at Britannia Beach or Furry Creek wastewater plants that would change obviously with future development as flows increase. Through some discussions with legal, we believe that the current charge in the bylaw for $9 per cubic meter for out of region waste relates to emergency events. So to actually accept out of region waste in non-emergency event, the service establishment bylaw would need to be amended. And this would require consent from the area director and approval of the inspector of municipalities. And that's just some things to note on top of that. So I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Go ahead.
So what was there are two locations, what was the second location?
It's known as Palmer-Lillooet wood fiber site. And I believe both this are within the district of Squamish boundaries.
Question. What's their alternative?
They're hauling it to Metro Van or Victoria, I believe, is what they are doing right now. So they're paying the rates and those locations, and they're significantly higher than our rate.
Okay. Director Stoner, question?
Yeah, can staff just speak to what the process would be for updating the fees and charges bylaw and timing related to that, to bring it in line with what would be actually allowable for a non-emergency event?
We'd have to bring back the service establishment bylaw at the next board meeting in January. You'd need consent from Director Rainbow, and then it would go to the inspector of municipalities, which is up to 12-week process. It could be sooner. So at the earliest, well, it's possible to bring this back by May board meeting for adoption. And that's, yeah, just because of the service establishment bylaw. If it was just the charges bylaw, it would be destroyed.
And just to further clarify from the staff report, I understand that there is capacity at the Britannia wastewater treatment plant. So I just want to confirm that. And if so, how long do we anticipate accepting this material, and or could that be on is it like an annual agreement? Is it in perpetuity?
So I believe what I've been told so far is that the anticipated disposal till at least late 2026. And I think that would be, we could have an agreement with them, or it would be at SLRD's discretion to accept or not accept. It's not a guaranteed, they're taking your waste type deal, so.
We can end this at any time.
Yeah.
Okay. Director Pettengill, go ahead.
So I'm not familiar with these sites. Do we know what's in this waste that they are providing?
My understanding, it's just these washroom trailers. I don't know specifics. That could be something I could bring back, but my understanding it is just what they call wash cars, which are washroom with trailers with multiple washrooms in them.
You have another question?
I would like to know where these sites are. I'm not familiar with where they are, but I don't think I can ask staff that. So
yeah. Director Rainbow, do you have questions? I'll come to you.
No, sorry, that's okay.
Okay, Director Mack, question, and then I'll come to you, Director Hubbard.
Yeah, I guess the way I look at this, if we have the capacity to process this stuff in our plants, then why not make the money from it? And rather than ship it down to Vancouver to let them make the money. You know, we could charge them a better rate than Vancouver does. There's less trucking involved, so we don't have trucks going up and down the highway burning diesel fuel. It just, yeah, take advantage of the opportunity. So that's my thought.
Director Herford, question?
Yeah, thank you. I understand the sort of available capacity. Is there any physical, like, are these facilities set up to, or whatever these vehicles, transportation vehicles, whatever are to sort of like plug right in, including whatever environmental supports and that sort of thing? Like, I just haven't visualized this. There's no further investment needed in these facilities to mechanically do what's being asked here.
Yeah, great question. So actually at Britannia Beach, there's a manhole that they would, prior to the start of the the treatment plant that they could dispose of in there. And I did include some additional potential costs from our operators side if they do have to be there to facilitate. So that would need to be taken into account with the fees that we are updating. And also the Britannia Beach wastewater treatment plant also facilitates the biosolid from, or the sludge from Furry Creek and Pinecrest. They all come to Britannia as pressed there, and so that's another reason why the funds that come in from the charge bylaw have to stay within the cost center. So that would be my choice for Britannia Beach because it services other wastewater plants as well.
Okay, and then in the follow-up, if that's okay, just in that like an accessible manhole feels informal. Is that best practice for this type of transfer? Is that common? Like I don't know where that falls, and I'm trying to understand if we're being asked to do something that's in like normal course of business essentially, or / best practices, or something exceptional or on the lower end of oversight and so on.
I mean, it would definitely not be open to everyone. It would be some specific agreement with this specific hauling company. And yeah, that's why I also included that additional cost if we have to make sure and facilitate that service.
Okay, thank you.
Director Rainbow, do you have a question?
I guess I can turn this into a question. My understanding is that the Britannia Beach facility, when it was built to a capacity far beyond what exists at the moment. It has the capacity to take over, to take all of the wastewater that will come from Britannia South when that's fully developed. And am I correct in thinking that if we increase the amount of the volume of stuff that is processed through there, it actually is better for the better in terms of the efficiency of the product, the process, and ends up saving us some money? I tried to make that a question.
Yeah, sure. It is beneficial to have more flow. It is underutilized plant. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
You have a question?
Yeah, so my understanding is the certificate for the flotel has a requirement that they deal with waste outside of the district of Squamish, and their stated plan was to use a barge. My understanding is wood fiber, it's Fortis that has stuff on the mainland, it's wood fiber that's sort of all their stuff is on the shore. So I guess, do we have an understanding why they're not barging this with the rest of the waste from the flotel, which by the way doesn't have a permit, is operating without a permit, and or in terms of, do we have an understanding yet of the traffic planning, because they've had challenges, like do we know where they're bringing the waste onto the shore from, or where is this being received and trucked from, or do we understand any of that?
The only thing I have on the Palmer-Lillooet wood fiber site is that it says barged in with pumping at Haynes Point, which I'm not sure what that specified about. Point. This was very, very preliminary and just see what the report's on. Sorry, but happy to bring more information back in.
That a follow-up?
Yeah, and do we have a sense of like the volume? I mean, they've said it's not the flotel. Does that line up with the volumes that they're talking about? The flotel is being barged out like they said. Would we be seeing the volumes they're claiming?
I think so. It's not a very large amount that would be coming this way. If but I don't know the details on the flotel and how much they use there. And I can just clarify again, we have no obligation to accept accept any waste.
Okay. Director Rainbow?
Yeah, just I'm going to make a comment. I mean, that flotel is in operation. It's 650 rooms total. Not all 650 are being used at the moment, I don't think. But that waste is being processed on the flotel, it's not raw sewage that we're talking about. It's already been through some sort of processing, and it is it's cleaned up to some extent. It is currently being offloaded from the flotel. It is currently being taken down to Vancouver or to Victoria. These things are happening. This is not something, a request for something that could possibly happen in the future. That's happening right now. The operation is being done by a local company. It's a First Nations company. It is in their interests to not take it all the way to Vancouver, but to bring it across the Sound to Britannia Beach. And then a comment from, we were talking earlier about water rates and taxation and impact on a community, and our Director of Finance explained that we're very, very small tax base there. What we have here is an opportunity for us to earn some money, to charge some fees, to accumulate some money and build up the reserves for that wastewater treatment plant in Britannia. So it's a benefit to our community, and it's not detrimental to anybody else. That the process is happening already. We're just shortening it. We're saying, instead of having to truck all this stuff or move all this stuff to Vancouver, you can bring it across to Britannia. It's much quicker. And the final comment I would make is that I'm looking for ways that Britannia can benefit from the site that's across the Sound from them. I know that Squamish don't like that. They don't want the wood fiber to be there, and they'd like to close it down. I don't personally think that's going to happen, but if it does, it does. But at the moment, it is operating, it is affecting Britannia, and I want to see some benefit from that project to Britannia Beach.
Thank you, Director Rainbow. Do you have a question, Director Stoner?
I do. Can I just clarify? I think I heard staff say that this was not waste from the flotel, but from 2 sites that are within the district of Squamish. Can you please clarify?
Yeah, the 2 sites I mentioned are at the SMJV Eagle Mountain Warehouse at 39500 Government Road in Squamish. And the other one was noted as Palmer-Lillooet wood fiber site that says barged in with pumping at Haynes Point.
Got it. Thank you. That's helpful.
I'm going to go to the CAO for clarity.
Thank you. I just have a suggestion. Recognizing there's comment about this cost center and the revenue that will be going into the Britannia Beach water cost center. There is a restriction that revenue can only be spent within that cost center. So I want to recognize that I do say the opportunity for operations to make revenue is very rare, and there is that. There is also an impact on other departments. This does jump work plans, and that impact would happen to other departments, which can't be covered through the cost center because of the current restrictions. So my suggestion might be, considering that and considering the questions that are here, including a need for mapping, perhaps in the locations that are being suggested, that a report come back from the staff with a project plan and timeline and really an eye into what the impact is for this project being prioritized in the queue. I'm not for or against that. I think there's a lot of good discussion here, and it might be the next step to answer some of the questions that are appearing here.
Is the juice worth the squeeze?
Great.
Sorry, if I know that there's a project that's the driver of this as an opportunity, but the changes we're considering would give the ability to receive or to pursue contracts to process waste. Is it it's not tied? I appreciate the context of why we're starting this conversation now, but what we're considering doesn't include source control as to whose waste we accept when and where, does it? Or does this open up, like it's specific to this opportunity that we're seeing in this contract today? Or does this doesn't open up, or does it open up further? And if this is a business opportunity that we're seeing as an organization, should it? I guess is kind of
that could be up to the board. So the wording in the current service establishment bylaw says we're providing this service in this area as per, I don't know the exact wording, but it's board consent. And so we could have it stated that, you know, I bring back a contract to the board to approve. So there's not just accepting waste here and there.
Thank you for that clarity.
Director Stoner?
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, can the CAO just repeat and or elaborate on the knock-on effects on staff capacity here? So even if we were to ask you to bring back a report versus pursue to make the amendments, how do we judge what gets dropped in order to make that happen?
That's a really good question, and not knowing the impact on other departments, I really couldn't answer how much time, if it is I think that's the question to ask. Sometimes we pursue things and we need to just broaden our scope and understand what other departments are involved in moving something forward. I think that's the question that I would like to ask. I'm hearing that these changes are not just an impact on the workload for ES, which would then create some revenue for the water system there. It might have impacts on other departments. And I'd like to talk to the other departments on where they can fit it into their work plan and allow the board to make that decision.
Director Mack, question?
Like this process that they're talking about doing, right? This isn't rocket science, folks. Lift the manhole, put the hose in, jump the fluid in, and make sure you do it in an environmentally sensitive manner and go away, and eventually you collect the money. Now here we are, bureaucracy's starting to go wild here again. Like, we're gonna have more staff time involved in determining, you know, how this thing all lays out. It's just what departments are gonna be involved in that. I'm sure that Director Butt here, his department can handle this.
Yeah.
Like I say, this isn't a tough thing to do.
So the issue right now is we are deciding as a board, do we ask staff to come back in January with a report and a contract for us to consider? Am I right back there? Like, you would come back with, this is what it's gonna cost and this is what it's gonna.
And the timeline.
And then we can decide at that time if we want to make those changes to the bylaw. Is that what you're suggesting?
With the report coming back, it sounds like there's some questions unanswered. With that report, we can also include just an idea, rough idea of the timeline.
Perfect. Does that answer your question?
I was gonna test a motion.
Okay, great.
I was going to propose that staff not pursue anything more with regards to this.
Oh, does anyone want to second that?
Wait a minute, say that again, sorry.
That staff not continue pursuing this.
He's suggesting we let this die right now. Oh. I think there's, I don't see anyone seconding that. Go ahead.
Then I'll make a motion that we get staff to continue working on the process of working out a contract with these folks that are doing the trucking and then bring it back to the board and we can say yay or nay or whatever, but let's let staff do that.
Process.
Yeah, like.
So there's the motion. Do I have a seconder?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll
Comments?
second that.
Thank you. Do you have a comment, Director Herford?
Yeah, I support this going back to, refer back to staff to sort of address the concerns we've heard today. The motion, it's quite long. I don't know that it expressed the specific concerns, but I will see that that those things are addressed going forward. I think I do think there's some important questions here around exact volumes, timing, source, and just how these other regulations that are involved in this are followed, so that we're getting whatever comes to this facility, if this is what comes to pass, sort of is on side through all the steps of it. And that's sort of where some of the concerns are coming from, I think, from some of the folks around the table, but we'll look forward to discussing this in January.
Yeah, sort of disappointed with this outcome. I think this is the flotel, the main part of this is operating without a permit from the district, which the EAO has confirmed they aren't absolved from municipal rules, and I don't think I'm concerned with this body sort of helping a proponent that's ignoring the bylaws of a municipality. And I think whether the technicality of how many steps it's going from the flotel, or if it's not technically the flotel piece, is sort of besides the point. That concerns me. I think this sounds like this is a discretionary decision. I remember the kids that came in and asked us to put up that chair and what they were asking for. Things have changed in the States. There's incredible challenges with the pipeline right now. This project isn't a certainty, it's what they like to insist, but for me, facilitating a project like this when, the commitments we make to the kids is really, really problematic. And I don't think, with the changes with our RGS, this is aligned with what we tell people we say we're about. And so didn't want staff to spend the time, but we'll see what the answers are. And I hope people have some time to think about this over the holidays and come up with a better outcome in January. Thank you.
Director Rainbow, comment?
Yes, we're talking now about capacity and ability for the plant to cope and all that kind of that's not our business. All we're being asked right now is to approve a concept. The concept being that the Britannia Beach wastewater treatment plant can accept materials from outside of Area D. And we've somehow got that into a discussion about the whole wood fiber plant and the Fortis pipeline and everything else. The fact is that waste is being produced right now. This is not something that's going to happen in the future. It is being produced. It is being moved from site down into Vancouver. And we're proposing, or we're being asked to consider not shipping it all that way, but just containing it close by within the regional district. I don't see how that impacts on Director Pettingill's arguments at all. He may be right. This project may shut down next month. And if it does, then we no longer have any sewage to process. No problem. If it continues going for 2 years, then we process that sewage for 2 years. Again, no problem, but a net benefit to us in terms of money. So I'm in favor of. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Stoner.
Yeah, just briefly, I'll support the motion on the floor. I think from an efficient use of our infrastructure perspective, it's important to make sure that if we have capacity, that no matter what the project is, we are using our wastewater systems to their maximum extent. And there is a tipping point where actually having more waste in a larger system makes it more efficient, which I read in the report. So happy to direct staff to start to review the bylaws that would allow the system to accept non-domestic liquid trucked waste. My only concern is the staff capacity component. We know that our staff's work plans are extremely full. And so I think it behooves us as a board to make sure that this isn't going to just bump something else that we've already identified as a priority. So that is my one hesitation. And so I look forward to the timeline component coming back to this board in January. Thanks for the work.
Seeing no other comments, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Register opposition.
Pardon me?
You gotta register opposition here.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah. We're gonna call a 5-minute recess.
Was that unanimous or was there opposition?
No, Director Pettengill opposed.
What I see is.
5-minute recess. For sure. We have a lot coming in January on budget, so I'm gonna save it for them. So with that, let's move on to 10.2 Seton Valley Fire Hall upgrades. This is a director's report from Director Birch Jones.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I'd like to allocate $10,000 from electoral area B PILT funds towards conceptual drawings for the Seton Valley Fire Hall.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay. Comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
We're now on 11.1.
Chair, I'll have to declare a conflict of interest. As my wife is the director on the board of the BRVCA, and my daughter is an employee of the BRVCA.
Thank you. Can we put Director Demare in the waiting room, please, while we consider this item? Thank you. Would someone like to move the request? Go ahead, prior to the motion, go ahead.
I just have one request on this motion in that the motion grant funding at the recommendation of the Director of Finance include up to the amount suggested, up to 6,100, because in the application there seemed to be carryover. So to ensure that that's that point, they submit the invoice and they are reimbursed. So if it just includes up to, that's.
That.
Moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director
I'll
Birch.
second that.
Okay, any comments? Is anyone opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we're now on 11.2. And this is a request for feedback. This is from the Union of BC Municipalities. This is a responsible conduct discussion paper that was circulated at a convention and then circulated in the Compass, which is the newsletter from the UBCM. My request would be that we consider these. I've asked for an extension from the Director of Communications at UBCM and he's granted that. So what I would like is if anyone's got any comments now that you'd like to share. Otherwise, if you could please share feedback in writing to me, and I will share those as a consolidated director's report for January that we would then share it back to UBCM. Is that fair, everyone? Okay.
That's a reminder by email.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you, I'll forget.
Okay, I just wanted to have it on the agenda so that when it comes back in January, we have something to send forward. Any questions from anyone on this? Okay, I will send an email reminder. And really the purpose of this is to kind of close the loop on the report from UBCM. But will also inform us as we move forward through our governance evolution and gives us some grounds for how we move forward. So you want a motion to receive the request moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director Birch Jones. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Any late business that hasn't already been handled? So we've got 13.1 was incorporated into the motion of 9.4. And so 13.2 is correspondence for information from, did we already deal with that one yesterday?
That was today.
That was today. Are we good?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So 13.3 are the two items that were pulled from the consent agenda yesterday. The Regional Fire Smart Program allocation. You requested that.
I did.
What would you
What
like? So we're now back to 5.2.4 in the consent agenda.
I pulled that one.
Oh, sorry.
13.3 and 4.
Yeah.
This is really good news. And I'm just wondering if there will be a staff report in the near future related to the $600,000 funding. Quick look at it, looks like $300,000 for each year for 2 years, with $50,000 each year to the 4 electoral areas, and $100,000 for general use, staff time, etc. So I'd like to see an update for staff on this project moving forward. It was really successful the last couple of years, and last year for sure, we had a big update on the program. Thank you.
Yes, that was actually shared in our newsletter yesterday, and pretty great news. Director Phillips, I see you on screen, so would you like to give us a brief, what you would like to do?
Yeah, certainly. Through the chair, Director Mayor, we'd be happy to bring forward a information report on our 2025 Fire Smart program in the future, certainly. And Maud Lucier, our wildfire mitigation lead, sends her regrets today, but she's in training, but she'd be happy to do that.
Awesome, thank you. As is sort of how we do things. Do you have a question?
I was just hoping to move that to the EAD in next opportunity.
Okay, is that, I think the whole board likes to hear that. And
I'd like to hear it. I think it ties into what we do municipally.
so,
Yeah.
question?
I was gonna move receipt just because I feel like that was.
Yeah.
I think we've accomplished what we wanted to with that one, and there didn't need to be a specific motion on the coming back. That felt like Director Phillips was.
Yeah, I think we're
excited to do that, so I'm just gonna move receipt of that report.
Okay. Seconded by Director Mack. All in favor, any opposed, motion carries. 5.3.1. Director Birch Jones, have we accomplished what we wanted to do there?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So then we have to receive that because it was part of the consent agenda. So moved by Director Birch Jones, seconded by Director Herford. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Director Phillips, for being here today.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
question, those other 13.1, 13.2, did we move, I know they were included
combined
as
into the,
in
yeah.
that one piece,
Yeah.
okay, great.
2.2.
Okay,
So we have to move receipt.
move receipt
Okay, I'll move
of
receipt.
13.2, Director Herford, second by Director Mack. All in favor, any opposed, motion carries. Yeah,
Question, just on this 13.1, would there be a step, like, what's the correspondence policy? Would they get a reply if they're concerned about the source, about hotel source and number? Is that something that staff would reply to, or is this incumbent to just the discussion that happened in the open is address that? Just.
yeah. Go ahead.
Staff rely on letters in the open, being open discussion that the person doing the correspondence would be watching it and understanding.
Yeah, unless it really requires specific response that isn't captured in the discussion.
Thank you for that clarity. I don't.
Okay. Any notice of motion? Okay. Let's, we're now skipping back to closed 17. We can strike 15 and 16.
Yeah.
There was no recommendations from committee of the whole. Awesome. Could I have someone please move that we close? Moved by Director Rupert, seconded by Director Pettengill. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.